Super Toto, հանձնվել չկա։
Toto Gaming KTM.
Still missing something,
So
right?
the party is filling up. There's more people, but we're still missing one very important ingredient. Who is that?
I think it's our fellow young people, those
Yes.
brave change makers
Yes,
that will be
the
here
other
today.
half of the equation. Should we call them up?
Please.
Yeah, let's call them up. Come and join us, please. We have Miss India Logan Riley. India Logan Riley, where are you? Come and join the delegations. Merci.
Madame Basima Abdul Rahman, s'il vous plaît.
Yes. Ensuite, on a Monsieur Paulias Serapinas. S'il vous plaît, venez nous rejoindre. Ensuite, on a qui? Madame Serina.
Madame Cyrina Bouc-Lemon, s'il vous plaît.
And then finally, we have Miss Victoria Ibiboye. Victoria, please come and join us.
E invitamos también al señor Juan Diego Vázquez.
Voilà. So, last but not least, Juan Diego Vasquez. So the panelists are all nearly here. Please take a seat. Take a seat, and Juan Diego is coming up. Augustin, I think we're doing a good job. We've got everybody at the party. They've all responded. They've all invited, and we're all here. Thank you for joining us. Should we open the panel? Do you want
Please.
to say
Thank
a few
you,
words?
Christina. Yes. So I would like to open just sharing with you something. I hear like a few days ago that most of the children that are born today, they will live till the year 2100. And they will grow up listening that they have to be ready for the 22nd century. And still, they depend up to us. As us, they depend up to you. The brave generations that have many fights still today to have the rights to be here standing, discussing about multilateralism. So every time that I hear that multilateralism is at risk, that young people do not trust institutions, that we do not trust science, I would like to make a pause to acknowledge what is happening in here. For the next 3 weeks, you will be putting differences aside. You will be at the same time working together, listening to each other, building consensus to work on the priorities of UNESCO for the next 2 years. And I think that that's something to be applauded, please, to all of you. And just like you, I have a similar responsibility. I have to work with the fellow young people for 20 countries and develop public policy recommendations to the G20 leaders. That recommendations, we need to do it in the framework of the G20. I was the chair of the youth engagement groups. And, you know, Christina, the world today is a bit hard, you know? It's not only about climate change, but it's also about trade war, it's about digitalization, it's also about automation. And as perhaps the media have foreseen it, it's a future that could be AI-driven, not by humans. So having all this in mind, we find out that young people from only 20 countries cannot solve all these very complex problems. So we decided to open it up to invite young people from every country. Then we decided to invite international organizations. Then we decided to invite development banks, of course, civil society, at last but not least, also adults. Because, you know, one very important thing we realize is that any challenge that we have today in the global stage is not a challenge of one generation. Our challenges that are challenges that affect many generations, and they had to be tackled in an intergenerational way. This means that if we do not work with several generations ago, we won't be able to solve them. Thanks to this inclusion, thanks to opening this multilateralism, not only to governments, but to private sector, public sector, academia, we managed not only to give to the G20 head of states an amazing recommendations, say that them, not me, believe me, but also 20 proven projects that can scale up and be replicated that they can implement in their home countries. But here, now, together, something is happening. History is being made because head of states had realized that it's not only that generation that will allow and give solutions to the challenges that we have today, that they have to include and to listen to young people. For first time in the history of the UN, a head of state is seated next to a young people having a real conversation. And I mean brave, because like any real conversation, they won't be reading statements. They will be actually engaging with the young people. They will be replying to their contents, replying to their point of view. So please, a huge applause to all this panel, the brave young people and the brave head of states. That being said, we have one first hot topic, right?
Yes, we do. We're talking about climate change. It's a burning topic at the moment. And I myself have been covering climate change. I work at Radio France Internationale. I was at the last COP in Poland. It was freezing, but I got to meet with Greta Thunberg before she became famous. I think today she probably is too busy to have time for me. But what I liked about Greta and other young leaders like her is their energy and their drive, their refusal to accept the status quo, and they won't take no for an answer. They're going out on the streets and they're demanding action from their world leaders, and it's so refreshing. Mais le problème, c'est que nous avons l'impression que ces mouvements des jeunes, aussi dynamiques qu'ils soient, sont un peu dispersés, que voilà, les jeunes descendent dans la rue, ils manifestent, ils crient des slogans, ils revendiquent leurs droits. Mais après, quand c'est terminé, c'est fini, ils rentrent chez eux et il n'y a plus d'action qui suit derrière. Est-ce que je me trompe? Je vais poser la question à notre première intervenante. C'est une dame tout à fait brillante. Elle s'appelle Madame India Logan-Riley. C'est une dame brillante parce que c'est elle qui va commencer le débat. Donc c'est pas évident. On va l'encourager pour qu'elle soit plus à l'aise. Donc Madame India Logan-Riley, you're the first panelist. Let's applaud you to make you feel a bit happier. So I'm saying to the audience that we're seeing these global youth protests. The Friday for Future protests led by Greta Thunberg have really thrust climate change to the top of the agenda. But we have the feeling that these movements are disorganized, that there's not much action that follows later on. You yourself, you're marching for more climate action. How can these protests lead to tangible and inclusive solutions?
Hello. Are we on?
Yes, yeah. You can speak.
Kia ora koutou katoa. I think the first thing I want to say is that on our last climate strike, 127,000 young New Zealanders marched for a safer climate future, and I think that really speaks to the amount of effort that is going on behind the scenes. These marches are flashpoints and expressions, but behind the scenes we have young people organising meetings with our government representatives, working on local solutions on the ground. And I think what really excites me about these young activists that I get to work with, that I get to work alongside, is that we understand that in order to be visionary about climate change, we have to be visionary about the other issues that we face. Any solution that we take on climate change has to include how it impacts other people. And that's particularly important for myself because, in fact, 5 years ago, I was here in Paris at the Paris Climate Talks. And that was when I found out that my community will be underwater in my lifetime. And we've already lost houses to the ocean. There's already been eroded. We've already been evacuated because of wildfires. So I understand that my community, my Māori, my indigenous community, will have to lose land all over again, much like what happened in the past with colonization. And that impacts culture, that it impacts our relationship to the land and impacts indigenous knowledge, which is so important to moving forward in the future.
I'd just like to get a comment also from Basima, because Basima, you are a young civil engineer. You're living in Iraq and you're working to build green cities. When we think about Iraq, we can't lose sight of the fact that this is a country that is facing insecurity and conflict. Do we have time to think about questions such as climate change? When we're facing such serious challenges to even live. And what solutions would you put forward for tangible change?
So it becomes natural to young people to think beyond their time. Since we are at the receiving end of climate change, we take this issue seriously and as a fact. Decision makers need to stop being skeptical and slow in their actions towards climate change mitigation. Long-running social issues and conflicts in the Middle East and North Africa region has pushed climate change topic down the agenda. But no one is safe from the climate change crisis. 150 million people are living on a land that is going to be underwater by mid-century, including Basra, Iraq's second largest city. If that happens, it will further the social and political problems in the region. It is not only an environmental problem, it is a security and a humanitarian crisis that cannot be addressed by one nation, one corporation, or even one continent, because the suffering of one nation is going to have a wider impact in our connected world of today.
And what do world leaders need to do then to address this problem? You're sitting to a head of state just next to you.
We will
I heard
have
His Excellency, Mr. from Tajikistan. Maybe do you have a question for him to ramp up climate action?
I would like to direct my question to His Excellency, Mr. Imamoli Rahman. Your Excellency, what do you commit to step up the climate change action, and what do you plan to do to support youth-led responses on climate change in your country, especially following our debate today?
Я Джон Ташакур. اولا که جمهوری تاجیکستان خود یکی از کشورهای جوانترین دنیا به شمار می رود. سن سال میانه اهالی تاجیکستان 24 سال را تشکیل می دهد. خب از لحاظ اکولوژی جمهوری تاجیکستان در جای 135 قرار دارد. در یک سال به سر یک نفر اهالی همگی 8 تانه گازهای گلخانوی یعنی کربن بعد مسیره. این بهترین نشان دهنده در دنیا به شمار می رود. یعنی 70% اهالی را که جوانان تشکیل می کند، ما در یک جایگی با جوانان درباره در 10 سال آینده تاجیکستان را به جای سیوم، حالا در جای ششم قرار دارد، به جای سیوم برآوردنی هستیم. با کدام را؟ خب تاجیکستان این نشان دهنده بهتری که به دست آورده است با از لحاظ انرژی تجدید شونده 98% انرژی استحصال شونده تاجیکستان از گیدرو انرژتیک است و این امکانیت میدهد که در جوانان نیروگاه ساخته ایستادند. در یک ابیکت قریب 15,000 جوانان با نامیروان که بعد 10 سال پورا به استفاده داده می شود. تاجیکستان به جای سیوم می براید. یعنی از لحاظ انرژی سبز، اقتصادی سبز، تاجیکستان در جهان جای ششم را اشغال می کند. به این نگاه نکرده ما کارهای خیلی هم زیادی را کرده ایستادیم با یک جایگی یونسکو. در حدود تاجیکستان 13,000 پریخ است. در 45-50 سال اخیر 1000 پریخ از بین رفت. حالا که تاجیکستان کشوری صنعتی نیست. اما زیان دیده ایستادیم از تغییریابی اقلیم. 60% آبی آسیای مرکزی در حدود تاجیکستان تشکیل می‌یابد. اگر ما در یک جایگی یونسکو سازمان ملل ما تأسیس دادن اکسپدیسیا، پژوهشگاه، آموزش و حمایت پیرخ‌های تاجیکستان و آسیای مرکزی را نگیریم، آینده در منطقه آسیای مرکزی مردم وضعیت یکی تأثیر منفی آن با استحصال مواد غذایی و زندگی مردم رسیدنش ممکن است. به این منطقه آسیای مرکزی پروبلمی ارال دارد، یعنی نرسیدن آب خوش شده ایستاده است. برای همین هم جوانان مثلا کشور ما به نهایت هوسمند هستند و در همه شاه‌ها به نیت فعال هستند. ما هر سال 5,500 جوانان را Bak kişvarhoyi mutamadin ba donuşkadoyi oli peşrafta az hisobi davlat ravon mümkünim. Masan dar jodey omuzişi sektörhoyi iqtisodiyot gidroenergetika energetika çavanda innovatsiya. Yani mo Tojikiston az jozi iklim behtar shavi iklim kumakardan enerjiya sabz iqtisodiy sabz یکی از جای‌ها پیشون میگیرد. من چی پیشون میکردم؟ که یونسکو باید فعال باشد. کمیسیه یونسکو اکسپدیسیه بین المللی یونسکو دایر به آموزش پیرک‌ها. در سطح آن باید یک ساختار نهادی تأسیس داده شود که دایر به حمایه پیرک‌های دنیا هم پژوهش هم حمایه. در اینجا پیشون میکردم که هم کشور را ترقی کرده و هم اینستیتوت بین المللی مالیوی با این کشورها ما باید کمک کنیم. در آن صورت این تهدید و خطرها آبخیزی ها آفتهای طبیعی سال به سال کاهش می‌یابد وگرنه وضعیت ما دیده ایستادیم در خود تاجیکستان باز میگم در خود تاجیکستان 13,000 پیریخ 1000 پیریخ از بین رفته است.
Very interesting comments, Your Excellency. I will just have to ask you to kindly wrap up so we can allow other panelists to have their say. India, Logan Riley, we've heard the challenges, the huge challenges facing Tajikistan, dealing with water scarcity. If we could sort of go back to youth-led responses, young people working to drive climate action forward. But how can your peers, how can you mobilize your peers to engage in dialogue with their governments, to work together to bring about change?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points I want to make to answer this, and I'll try to be as brief as possible.
Okay.
First of all, I just want to make mention of a week ago, or in the last few days, the New Zealand government passed the Zero Carbon Act, committing to reducing their carbon emissions to zero by 2050. Now, that started 3 years ago on a rainy weekend in the capital of New Zealand, where a bunch of us young people got together and decided that we needed to see this legislated, that we needed to have a legal mechanism with 5 yearly budgets towards net zero in 2050 that meant that our government would have to get there. And over the last few years, it's been actions, it's been protests, it's been meeting with decision makers, it's been constantly showing up and using our particular digital media skills to spread the word and get young people to get on board. And that resulted in a law change last week, which is particularly exciting.
Very relevant.
Yeah, right. Okay. And the second point I want to make just very quickly is that multilateralism, because that is the theme of today, how it has been done in the past and the power dynamics that is entrenched have meant that Indigenous people haven't been able to get in the room. But we've been trying to address that by getting more Indigenous young people, particularly